Jill Brown. We've put together this special show, Hurricanes, Coordinates for Disaster, to kick off the hurricane coverage. In our first segment, Charlie Welsh takes a look at how we keep track of these monster storms.
(1938), New England. A giant hurricane rips up the coastline and kills 600 people. That hurricane came as a complete surprise. It was not forecast to strike New England.
Early in this century, if we go back to how we had to forecast hurricanes, the only information that we had at sea were ships at sea. And at the very beginning of the century, we didn't even get radio reports of ships.
That was before satellite pictures, before radar, and before reconnaissance flights. Those are our three greatest tools in forecasting and tracking the giant storms. The first line of defense are the pictures from the weather satellites. We can watch the storms as they develop anywhere in the Atlantic. Once forecasters determine that a storm poses a threat, reconnaissance aircraft are dispatched.
The reconnaissance reports are the only ones that give us the exact intensity of the storm with enough precision.
When the storm gets within 200 miles from shore, forecasters are able to use radar. Radar allows us to track the hurricane on a constant basis. So even though at times one of the forecasting tools might be more useful than others, none of them stands alone.
Each one of these systems each one complements the other. So all these systems need to be used. They all need to be integrated into one picture, one comprehensive picture of the hurricane.
Once hurricanes crash on shore, coastal stations tell us their exact intensity, and study of the wreckage left behind dissolves some of the mysteries of the greatest storms on Earth.
If you live anywhere near the coast, from Brownsville, Texas to Bar Harbor, Maine, you're in hurricane country. You need to get ready for the season. Here are some tips which will help you prepare.
If a major hurricane hits the area where you live, you'll probably suffer some property damage. Instances like these are virtually impossible to avoid. But it's easy to protect your loved ones and valuables. It just takes planning, and you should begin immediately. First, you must decide whether you should stay or evacuate your property. If you live in a solid house far from the coastline, you might consider riding out the storm at home. You should plan on evacuating if you live in a mobile home. If you live in any building which is on the coast or in a low-lying area nearby, your home is likely to be flooded by the storm surge.
Now, people who live in that area must be aware of this phenomenon, and they must know that they have to evacuate. That's all there is to it.
If you're going to evacuate, find the route to the nearest shelters. Next, secure your home. If you don't have storm shutters, get them, or stock up on enough plywood to cover all windows and doors. Then get a battery-powered radio, flashlights, and if you plan on staying home, get large water containers. These are just a few of the important steps you should take in preparation for the hurricane season. When a hurricane watch is issued, stock up on the batteries you need, tune into the Weather Channel and other media outlets, fuel up the car, board up your windows, and secure lawn furniture. If you plan on riding out the storm, stock up on canned goods and fill large drinking water containers. When a hurricane warning is issued, if you're staying home, board up doors, move valuables to upper floors, bring in pets, stay indoors, and watch the Weather Channel and other media outlets. If you're evacuating, leave early in the day. Shut off water and electricity. Take important papers. Lock up and drive safely to the nearest shelter.
Here at the Weather Channel, we're lucky to have one of the world's foremost authorities on hurricanes, John Hope. John was a member of the first team of forecasters at the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida. We now take a look back on the career of our own John Hope.
Some of this watch area.
John Hope is the Weather Channel's hurricane specialist. He's been at the network since day one, but his contributions to the weather community started some 4 decades earlier. John served in the South Pacific during World War II, which sparked his interest in the forces of tropical storms. After the war, weather was his main focus at the University of Chicago and at the U.S. Weather Bureau in Memphis. But his career in tropical meteorology didn't take off until the early 60s. John helped NASA launch their manned spaceflight program, forecasting the liftoff conditions for the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs.
There was a lot of excitement and interest around the country at that time. We were getting ready to finally, in the late 60s, put a man on the moon, so this was a very important forecast assignment.
In 1967, John's career path changed again when the National Hurricane Center established its national headquarters in Miami.
5 hurricane forecasters were selected to staff that initial office, and John Hope and I had the privilege of being 2 of the 5.
Hurricane Camille was the group's first big test.
The satellites were pretty new then, and we didn't know quite as much about being able to assess how strong a hurricane was by an analysis of satellite pictures we know today.
The National Hurricane Center continued to advance the science of hurricane forecasting with each passing year. John Hope was due to retire from a long and successful career in 1982, but there were new opportunities on the horizon.
We have a tropical storm that's actually
being one of the Weather Channel's first on-air meteorologists was a fresh challenge.
And here it is on
And when hurricane season came around, he was the voice of experience.
Right now, we're looking at the most powerful hurricane to strike the Georgia, South Carolina area this century.
John has been recognized by many organizations for his contributions. But perhaps his greatest accomplishment has been helping others understand and prepare for hurricanes.
Well, I think that education is very important because unless you've experienced a hurricane yourself, you don't really know what it's all about.
As you saw in that last report, Hurricane Camille was the National Hurricane Center's first big test. Camille was one of the strongest ever. Charlie Welsh tells us in this report that Camille also brought many surprises.
On Sunday, August 17, 1969, 180-mile-per-hour winds and an unprecedented tidal surge pushed over the Mississippi shoreline. Camille was the most powerful hurricane to hit the United States coast during the last 50 years. Hurricane Camille destroyed $1 billion worth of coastal property. 141 people died along the coast. Most drowned in a flood of seawater caused by Camille's record 24.5-foot storm surge.
Camille gave us a very good example of just what a storm surge can do.
9 out of 10 people who die in hurricanes are killed by storm surge. As a hurricane approaches the coast, its winds drive water shoreward. Once the edge of the storm reaches the shallow waters of the continental shelf, winds of over 100 miles an hour dam the flow of water, forcing it onto the shore. At first, the water level climbs slowly. As the eye approaches, water rises rapidly. Tons of moving water hammer away at structures built on the coastline.
We think of water perhaps as not being as hard as it is, and so when it hits against an object, it's very much like being hit with a solid object. You could think of maybe a train wreck or an automobile accident, just tremendous collision there.
25 residents of the 3-story Richelieu apartment complex in Pass Christian thought they were safe from the storm and refused to evacuate. They threw a party in Camille's honor. When the storm surge came, it took the Richelieu apartment complex with it. Mary Ann Gerlach was one of 2 survivors.
The water came in the back and busted out the back windows. And I swam out, and as I was looking back where the building was, you could see the apartment where the hurricane party was going on. They had the hurricane lamps, and all of a sudden, the building just started coming down till it came underneath the water, and I knew everybody had drowned.
There are hurricane forecasters who focus on the future beyond the extended forecast. They're always trying to determine how many hurricanes we'll have in the coming years. For this season, they're expecting an increase in the number of hurricanes over recent years.
North Carolina's Outer Banks, August 31st, 1993. Hurricane Emily only brushed against the U.S. coastline, but the storm still caused over $35 million in damage. 3 people were killed. The 1993 Atlantic hurricane season featured only 8 named storms. An average season produces 10.
Well, you have to have a set of ingredients come together to form a hurricane. Unless the temperature of the ocean surface is 80 degrees or higher, we're not likely to see a hurricane develop. Another very important factor is to have about the same direction and speed of winds through a deep layer of the atmosphere, say from the surface up to 20,000 feet or so.
Across the globe, many factors can affect these winds. The most recent episode of the warming of the Pacific Ocean waters, known as El Nino, has come to an end. This could mean more powerful tropical storms in the Atlantic.
The winds in the high atmosphere near the tops of the hurricanes are stronger in an El Nino year, stronger from the west. And we know that wind shear, that is the difference between the winds high up and the winds low down, is very detrimental to the formation of hurricanes. If there's much wind shear, a hurricane won't form.
In Africa, the drought in the Sahel region appears to be receding, which also may make conditions more favorable for hurricane formation.
It's the general circulation features around the globe, those general circulation features that make it rain in West Africa more are those features conducive to intense storm.
But forecasting the number of storms in the Atlantic Ocean doesn't necessarily give us a clear picture of what impact these storms will have on the United States. Hurricane Andrew was the costliest storm in U.S. history. It hit South Florida in 1992, a below-average year for hurricanes.
Andrew, though, was a very powerful hurricane, which really illustrates the point that you only have to have that one major hurricane to cause a whole lot of trouble.
Stay with us through the season, and as we say, if you're in hurricane country, start right now preparing for the possibility of a hurricane in your area. We'll do our best to keep you informed throughout the hurricane season, so stay tuned. I'm Jill Brown, the Weather Channel.